to give us a little introduction, and I'll get back to you in a little while.
Hi, everybody. I have a French horn in the background,
Oh,
so sorry for
sorry.
that. So thank you so much for joining us. This is what we hope will be an ongoing dialogue with our colleagues here in the Twin Cities and all of you across the US about artist equity and what's happening in our greater ecosystem. We're really delighted to share our home hosting Zoom world with these incredible leaders that you'll hear from today and the incredible work that they've been doing for quite a long time in our community. And we'll be sharing also, as we already have in our chat, more information. So hope that you will check out their websites, follow them, support them, because they're doing wonderful work, and excited about the conversation today. We do want to thank the Minnesota State Arts Board for support for this, and the voters of Minnesota. And we are going to share also some video, which will help you learn even a little bit more about these wonderful people here. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being part of our ecosystem. Thank you for supporting ACF and these artists. And Dameun, our Director of Community and Belonging, will take it over. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. As Vanessa said, you know, the year 2020 has presented presented a number of challenges for a lot of our communities, due to COVID, the global pandemic, and um, the murder of George Floyd, just about a year ago. Um, and one of the things that I've noticed in my time, um, especially living in the Twin Cities, and growing up in DC, is that these community arts organizations that really have those close ties to the community play a crucial role in in helping the community during these times, and outside of these times as well. They act as sort of the glue for the community, keeping the community together. They act as places for healing, places for sharing stories, and often they collect the or archive the history of the community. So really, really important roles that they serve. Um, and one of the things that I also know is that quite often the leaders of these organizations don't really get a chance to talk to one another and discuss the challenges of running organizations like these, and to share the successes that they can celebrate. And so that was one of the reasons we really wanted to bring these arts leaders together, um, as a community, sharing stories. And this has come out of a couple of conversations that we've had over the course of the spring. So I'm going to introduce our leaders and share a little bit about them and about their organizations through videos, and they're going to share a little bit about their journey to create the organizations and work at the organizations that they have now, and a little bit about their history working in the community. And then I have a few questions to ask them too. We'll save a little time at the end for you all to ask questions too. Feel free to share questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll try to respond to them as quickly as we can. Thank you for showing up. Today we have with us Ananya Tedidia, from Ananya Dance Theater, Shay Cage from Tru Ruts and various other organizations, and Marianne Kiro from Indigenous Roots. And I have worked with all of these artists, so I know a lot about their work and their background, and I'm just so excited to share it with you today. So I think I'm going to start with Ananya, and introduce her. Ananya is a collaborator of mine currently, and I've been working with Ananya Dance Theater for a number of years and been a big fan before that. And Ananya's work as a choreographer, dancer, and thinker brings together contemporary dance, social justice choreography, and a commitment to healing justice. She is the artistic director of Ananya Dance Theater, a dance company of BIPOC women and femmes, and co-founder of Shagram Institute for Performance and Social Justice. In response to the Twin City uprising in 2020, she created, and I hope I'm going to say this right, Kutumkari relationship making healing movement series with a particular invitation to BIPOC women and femme healers. Her book, Heat and Alterity in Contemporary Dance South Choreographies, was published in 2020. She teaches choreography, social dance history, and contemporary practice at the University of Minnesota. Ananya is currently creating Dastak, a dance theater work exploring borders, boundaries, home, and belonging with the support of NPN Creation Fund, NDP Production Award, and a two-part MANTC residency. She is a recipient of the 2021 AP Anderson Award and a 2021 McKnight Choreography Fellowship. So, Ananya, welcome and congratulations on all the recent accolades that you've received. Because I think, did you leave something out? I think you left something out, or maybe Ananya Dance Theater got
It's
some.
amazing. That's the thing. Like this whole session could be on Ananya.
So, Ananya, we're going to share a little bit about Ananya Dance Theater through the video that you sent to us. So we can cue that up. We'll hear a little bit more about Ananya's work in a minute.
What happens when the river flows into the ocean? What happens when the river flows into the ocean? What happens when the river flows into the ocean? What happens when the river flows into the ocean? What happens when the river flows into the ocean? What happens when our daughters birth us? We rise in the morning dew and fall back into ourselves. Remember, 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 remember.
That was fantastic. Lovely. Um, so, Ananya, one of the things that I've really appreciated about your work over the time is really how much I learned um, about global movements and the connection and intersectionality um, of the work that is needed for liberation. And I know that that's really central to your work and your practice. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about sort of the origins of that work and what inspires you to do it and to have created Ananya Dance Theater.
Thank you, Dameun. Thank you for this invitation. Also, Vanessa and Dameun, I appreciate this conversation and that I get to hang out with my sisters, Shay and Marianne, and all of you. And I also want to say when I selected that video, I did not know that today we would be looking up to the famous and amazing Miss Robbie McCauley who left us. The that poem is Sharon Bridgefort's, and in the background you see Miss Laurie Carlos, and these are amazing artists of the jazz aesthetic. who are so important to creating an American vernacular, as Laurie would say. I want to hold that up for a second before I jump into my work. I want to also acknowledge that here I am on Dakota land, Minnesota Makoche, and I pay my humblest salutations to the Dakota Oyate and the Anishinaabe peoples. Here we are. So in Indian dance, we do not learn what is this thing called choreography. There is not this thing. We dance, it's a practice. You learn a certain aesthetic. You work with the guru, and the guru composes works within that frame. And that's the traditional frame. That's what I know. I also grew up in Bengal, and I want to tell you a little bit about why my Bengali lineage is particularly important to me, especially now, as this is a state that has risen up against the fascist central government in 100 ways. Right now, in the recent defeat of the central government in elections this month. So in Bengal, we've had a left front government forever. And what that did was that it channeled the arts, and particularly song and performance and dance, along a line of a people's movement. And that's important to my training. But I did not still learn what is this thing called choreography? It's actually my commitment to social justice that taught me how to choreograph. And this thing that Dameun talks about, this relationship of the global, how is my struggle sitting in Kolkata related to what is happening in Palisades, Minnesota related? They're in fact absolutely connected. And this pandemic of global hate and the spreading underground movement of global love are in fact at the root of my work. And to see how these connections happen, how we see them manifested through the many different stories that are juxtaposed in a mosaic with each other, that's what taught me to choreograph. That's what my choreography is. That kind of feeding in of stories, not in a logical sort of linear narrative, but in a mosaic narrative, in a narrative that in an arc that layers stories onto each other. And that connectivity is the choreographic principle I work with. That's what I call Shangram. Shangram in my language means resistance. So in Bangla, it means resistance. And to me, it is the resistance that we are not all the same. Black and brown communities need to stand together with our understanding of our difference, and therefore we can stand behind each other's movement. So that's how solidarity is built, right? So that's how all of that taught me to choreograph, and that is why this local global connectivity, why sort of neoliberal notions of, let's just recycle doesn't work, but to trace it. So I know that when I drop these wires off in this bin, so often there are people, there's these women sitting in far off, quote unquote, third world countries, sitting and separating out the red wire from the yellow wire from the black wire. So where is the end of our recycling? When we trace things through, we begin to understand how our small actions here, in fact, implicate us in a global pattern either of justice or of unmoving hierarchies.
Wow. Yes. That is amazing. And yeah, I think that quite often one of the things that 2020 hopefully has done is shown sort of that global impact. And I can't think of anything more sort of telling than what's going on with the pandemic, as we look at our country and our vaccination numbers increasing, and yet there are countries like India and Brazil where the numbers of infections are growing. and what we can do here to change that,
Yeah.
and really have our leaders listen and have a more global approach to this, knowing that we're all in this together. Actually, protecting your neighbor is protecting yourself, essentially. Um, that's so we're going to dig into that a little bit more. I want to get uh, moving to another one of our leaders, and someone that I've actually known um, longer than anyone that I've known outside of my family continuously. It's Shay Cage, um, who I've known for almost 30 years now. Wait, has it been 30? It'll be 30 years. Um, wow. And a constant collaborator over those times. Yeah, secrets. Don't tell too many. This is a public forum. Um, but we've been connected, and I've gotten to see her grow as an artist, as a leader. She was my classmate at McAllister College, but just an amazing organizer and creator. Um, so let's learn a little bit more about Ms. Shay Cage and Tru Ruts. So Shay Cage is a writer, activist, theater, film performer, and director raised in Mississippi and living in Minnesota, who has been called a change maker, one of the leading artists of her generation, a mover and maker. Her work has been featured in several publications, including Blues Vision and the St. Paul Almanac. And her plays have been produced recently at Stages Theater, locally in Open Eye Theater. She holds both Emmy and Ivy Awards, and has been using art to elevate Black and Brown narratives through Tru Ruts for 20 years. So we're going to welcome Shay Cage, and we're going to play what I believe is a trailer for an upcoming film that is actually related to the community response and community during George Floyd and things that have happened since then. So let's play that clip, and we'll learn a little bit more about Tru Ruts and Shay Cage.
We said over and over again that art keeps the enthusiasm of social movement alive. That when you're at a protest, when you're at a school board meeting, when you're at an intersection, and you hear a poem, it activates the heart and it activates the imagination.
My name is Tish Jones, and I have been called here to represent ancestors whose blood sift through the palms of my little brother's hands as he plays in the sand, and they bless him. Forefathers who existed before my forefathers and raised men to raise men, hence the sun and the raisin. Then a generation of beautiful Black women born and bred to believe that beauty belongs to everyone but them. My name is Tish Jones, and I have been called here to represent the missing piece. Peace.
Artists here see and believe in a reality that sometimes seems crazy because it seems like impossible. And this vision of possibility of what true community, true equality and equity really means. And not only do they vision that, but they actively work towards that.
I can't shake poetry. I don't know if I chose poetry. I think you're a poet because you need to be a poet. It feeds me, it seems to feed my community, but also it gives me something to do with my grief. It gives me something to do with my rage.
People are tired of dying senselessly. We are tired of it. It comes on Indigenous people and Latinx people, but it especially falls so hard and so consistently on the descendants of slaves.
The pandemic of COVID-19 was preceded by the pandemic of COVID-16-19 for Black folks. The pandemic of enslavement weathered and weathered our bodies to the point to where when COVID-19 hit, it had fertile ground by which it could germinate.
Black people don't make up the majority of this country, however, was really making up the majority of deaths from COVID-19.
Healing isn't a straight path, and it isn't something that feels good all the time.
We can't just use water and soap during this time. We got to get out the alcohol, and we got to get in there and make sure that all of the infection that has been there has to get out.
We're here today to heal the pain. No weapon formed against can penetrate, just ricochet. This here for the fam, not the fans unless you came to fan the flame. Don't need a gun, I got a band, and you know that we can bang.
I'm just chilling with my brother in the summertime, and there's all the kids kicking back in the sunshine. Maybe we can live freaking black, maybe unwind, take our time.
Wow, that was powerful. I love that. Great work. I can't wait to see the full film.
Dameun.
Yeah. So Shay, Tru Roots. It says 20 years. It feels like it's been longer. I don't remember.
It's been longer. I just kind of cap it at 20 because it feels like a round number,
Right. There you go. So one of the things that that I know and love about Tru Roots is that there really is no bound to the arts that you use to make those connections in community. You all do there's a record label, you do theater, you've had poetry readings and have been instructing young poets for a very long time in the community. We talked to Kino Evil yesterday, and I know that he came up through Tru Roots work. So I wanted to talk to you maybe specifically about sort of that cultivation aspect of Tru Roots and how you cultivate young voices and talents and why that's important to community and keeping community together.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's a joy and an honor to be here with my comrades who I know. I know that they're exhausted in this work that they do, but I know they also get fed by it as I do. I also just want to acknowledge that the recent deaths on the north side of the young babies and the remembrance that a lot of us are organizing around. It's just reminding us that, even the singular moment is, there's lots of tentacles and arms to other things. And so that's kind of really maybe my answer to your question is I've been blessed. I started with Tru Roots in 1995 as a shorty, as my kids are now discovering the word. I'm like, get with it, y'all. But I just, for me, the way I was raised and the way that EG was raised, in Africa, there's not a lot of separations, of like, how we seed the soil on this side, and then we harvest the fruit on that side and plant new seeds on this side. So for me, I feel there's a lot of fluidity between how we show up in community. And so I try not to spend a whole lot of time around the naming and the titles of it but I think it's also important, like as we went through the Freedom Summer and the pandemic and people started asking like, how long y'all been here and what y'all been doing? And like, and having interviews that were absent of my people and this deep work, I was like, whoa, how do we archive our work? So, I have stepped into, I'm known for doing narrative work in filmmaking, but I've stepped into doing quite a lot of documentary work over the last year for that reason. And so the nurturing is like, even in that work, it's bringing folks along. When we shoot films, even professional high level ones, it's 90% BIPOC folks on those films. And it's like no excuses. And so how are we not only employing each other, but how are we creating a training ground in every avenue that we face? So that's in the theater and the film and the community work and et cetera. And also humbling ourselves, those of us that are getting older, to also be the students, Like I'm mentoring 7 people right now, but they are also mentoring me and they don't realize it. So I'm like, I'll send them something. I'm like, does this look great? Like, what are you, like put your young eyes on this, and they send stuff back to me and I'm like, I would have never in a million years caught that. So that just touches my heart, like just from the early days of us being like naming that we are consultants and naming our value and naming the fact that we should be let into rooms that often leave us out. And also claiming, Lori, Ananya lifted up Lori, and some of our mentors that have passed, they were like, you've been doing this work, just claim it. The young folks right now that are like, oh, I don't see myself as a writer because I haven't gotten published. I'm like, you've been writing for 5 years, you are a writer. So claiming it and really teaching us what that means by our own standards. So that's kind of it, Dameun. We've started a lot of things and we passed a lot of batons from the Million Artist Movement to Quest for the Voice and, urban griots, the initiation. The list is long and that makes me like want to cry, like tears of joy. But I also am like, none of it is ours. We just taking a baton and passing it along and having some photos to show our babies that we showed up in leadership, but we got to also step out of the way. Ashe.
Oh, I love that. I think that that's something that we often forget as we get older, that there is a time to step aside and let the younger generation lead. Not to say that we have to get out of the way and sit down, but we can we can step behind and follow. Yeah, for sure. I love that, sharing that. I think we're going to get a little bit into some of the work that happened last summer with the collection of artists that you helped to kind of facilitate to take on some of the issues with local arts organizations and how they are treated and funded in the Twin Cities, sort of in response to what happened to our field during the global pandemic. So we'll come back to that a little bit, but I want to introduce Marianne Kiro, who is a co-founder of Indigenous Roots. And I've known Marianne's work as a performer, but then my ears sort of peaked up when I started hearing the rumblings of this space that she and her partner were creating over in east on the east side of St. Paul. It was an area that had a lot of beautiful culture and arts, but not a lot of space for that art to be cultivated. And so they have created Indigenous Roots, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Indigenous Roots and Marianne. So looking, Marianne Kiro's Islander mama, dancer, artist, organizer, and community activator. She was born in the Philippines and immigrated with her family to the Dakota lands, Imzina Ska, east side of St. Paul, that I was talking about, Minnesota. Together with her life partner in duality, they co-founded Kaupuli Yostinoxi, a traditional Mexican Nahua Aztec dance and community group in 2006. That's the group that I was referring to earlier, and Indigenous Roots in 2015. Kiros is also the co-founder and co-director of Indigenous Roots Cultural Arts Center, where she and a coalition of artists and organizers and cultural groups provide accessible space and programming opportunities through arts, culture, and activism. Guided by ancestral knowledge, Kiros believes that art and culture is an ecosystem in fostering well-being and generational wealth. Today, Kiros continues to build collective power with and for Brown, Black, and Native and Indigenous artists, organizers, and community members in the Twin Cities and beyond. So, um, Marianne, you shared with us a video that I also found to be quite beautiful. So we're going to check that out and learn a little bit more about your work and your journey, and more about the work you're doing with Indigenous Roots.
I love the East Side. I feel like East Side is like that small town in a big city where you know folks from generation to generation. I feel like the first time we really got into doing public art, like mural pieces here on 7th Street, this was in 2017. There's 2 at Centro Mex. And those are photos of youth that went out to Standing Rock in 2016 with us. So we did a youth caravan, brought out over 100 youth out there, focused mainly on brown, black, indigenous, native youth to bring out to Standing Rock. And from there, the youth were really motivated. How can we keep this going? How can we keep activating? How can we keep activism going here on the East Side or in St. Paul? And we partnered up with Good Space Murals, MN 350, Dayton's Bluff Community Council, and then so we posted those murals up. There's one artist by the name of Pablo Calaca that did the mural at 809 7th Street. Hats off to really East Side works, right? The working class people of the East Side. That the East Side was really the first stopping point for a lot of immigrants because it was the most affordable, most accessible at the time, and still is compared to other places in the city. The building itself, they had a Black woman who was actually doing construction work, so it was actually inspired by her. She did welding and other construction work, and so that piece was really kind of a nod to her and nod to our neighbors and residents that have built the East Side. So that one is from Pablo Calaca, and then the one in Mañana is also from Pablo Calaca, and that one was a gift to Mañana. The owner of Mañana, their family has been here. You know, they started here in the East Side. Their family actually lived a block away from us, and every Saturday we would smell the whole block. The whole block would smell like pupusas, and we would send our oldest son to go down the block, go buy some pupusas. Saturday night, you know, we knew it was coming. And, you know, we were just really proud of how they could have put the restaurant anywhere in the city. They could have probably made more money going to another part of the city, right? And now they own the building, so they're also property owners, right? Which is what we want. That builds generational wealth. And so the mural was really an honor to her and her sons, and just the traditions of home cooking and how that they're still able to carry that inside their restaurant. And then Cordell Handy was definitely, it was a joint effort between Cordell's family, Mañana, and ourselves, and some community residents, some organizers, to really honor his presence there. We remember when that happened, like the whole street was closed down. And you know what's sad about the whole thing is we don't have closure. We don't have the police report. We don't, nothing. Like, you know, St. Paul Police has not even publicly shared what had happened. It was just like an open and closed case. But we know Ms. Kimberly is fighting hard to find justice for Cordell and everyone that has been taken down by police brutality. And so for us, it was really important to have Cordell's photo there, just as a reminder. And if we could, I mean, every single place, right, should have a memorial, a photo of some kind, because someone who has 5 children, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to lose any of my kids. Put it right here. That's okay, now you're getting the hang of it. Where do you think the next one should go? We all have roots from somewhere, whether that's our birth family or our chosen family. And I think it's just really important for us to be able to tell stories through murals. And so we're very lucky and very grateful to have business owners who are willing to, who want murals in their buildings, because it's not like, that's not the case in every neighborhood, right? And a lot of this is just funded within all of us. It's not funded by like some big, huge grant. It's really us. I think it makes it even more special.
That's fantastic. There's such beautiful work on the East Side now because of the work that you all are doing at Indigenous Roots, Marianne. And one of the things that I remember and really inspired by is how you created the space that is Indigenous Roots, the actual physical space, and what you all invested in it, and and learned to make it happen. So I wonder if you could, share a little bit about that story of creating Indigenous Roots and claiming that space right there on a really important street on the east side of St. Paul.
Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat. Beautiful afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been really crazy, I feel like it just happened yesterday. Like we walked into this building. It was an old printing press and had all kinds of stuff in it, like business, office, cubicles, printing machines, and it wasn't move-in ready, but we saw the potential in it. We were like, wow, this is so beautiful. And it was a mess, you guys. It was not like arts conducive or anything like that. And Sergio and I, my partner Sergio and I, our families both immigrated to the east side, to Mniziska. And we graduated from there. This is the neighborhood that we grew up in. And what we found when we were like in our college, like post high school, we were going to South Minneapolis a lot, actually, like to intermediate arts and different spaces, like the theaters and the galleries there, because there really wasn't anything in our neighborhood. And if there was, it was definitely not accessible to people who look like me or from the same background. So for us, it was just really important to be able to create and build space that was accessible to Black, Brown, Native, and Indigenous folks that, are from all disciplines, right? Whether it was just they wanted to reconnect with their roots or preserve their cultural practices, or a space to just create and build something that brought joy to them and something that can express themselves. And honestly, the main thing was creating a space for our youth, our young people. Sergio and I, we were lucky to have found each other at a very young age and be connected in arts and culture. That was just something, it wasn't named. We weren't like, wow, you're so cute, let's go out with me because you're into arts and culture. It wasn't like that. But it was very much, we knew that both of us had immigrated to the US, and it was very a whitescape, white landia kind of thing. And it just, our love for culture, our love for our melanin just brought us together, and we were able to do that and start organizing in high school together from, I always tell people, before Dia de los Muertos, before Day of the Dead became popular, before it started getting sold at Target and Party City, we were putting ofrendas together at our high school and sharing it with our peers and our teachers. We celebrate Day of the Dead in the Philippines. And that was just something that culturally connected us together as well. So there was a lot of intersectional work. And I feel like because of that intersectionality that brought us together, that's something that has been kind of the foundation of the work that we've done, either through our Mexica Aztec dance group, showing up in solidarity and doing intersectional work for Black Lives Matter, Native Lives Matter, all of the different pieces that we all just kind of have to show up for each other for. And so that's been also the foundation of the space, is really making sure that it's not solely for one group or one entity. It really is truly just a space for us to be able to self-identify and self-express who we are in our truest and most authentic form. And no one else can tell you who that is except you.
I love that story. I remember hearing you talk about some of this at the Alliance for Artist Community conference a little while ago, and one of the things that I think is really interesting, it came up yesterday with Alejandra Tobar Alatriz, and she used the term capitalism capitalism hack, and I love that that phrase that she used, and when she said it, the first thing actually I thought of was your work and what you all did at Indigenous Roots. Now I know another part of the work that the three of you do is really advocating for artists across the board, and that means actually challenging some of the institutions that exist, currently that serve as gatekeepers in a sense to funding for organizations like yours. And we all know that even though Minnesota is blessed to have a lot of money devoted uh, to arts and culture via our state legislature, um, the way that it is distributed is unequal. Um, and I know this is something that became very apparent and clear again over the course of 2020. Shay, you had played a large part in organizing a lot of artist leaders across the city from multiple backgrounds. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that work and the ongoing sort of quest for restructuring these funding streams and for really investing in BIPOC arts organizations. I know we had some news earlier this week from two of our larger foundations here. I think actually one of them I think Eleanor here from the Jerome Foundation. But I wonder if you can talk about some of that work about organizing and advocating for our artists here in Minnesota.
Well, yeah, one of the things I think that the pandemic did was, I think for some people it gave sort of a clearing, a moment of clearing. I hate to say like a breath, but I will, to just kind of see things with clear eyes after a while, because I feel like a lot of us, and I'll speak for myself, are running like a race, and often that race is a balance between being the creatives that I feel, being the creative that I feel I was put here to be, and use my art as a tool, right? To uplift, to elevate, to illuminate, all of those things. But at the same time, to have a responsibility to, acknowledge these systems that continue to hold us down. And so I feel like that there's a constancy when you're doing both of those at the same time. Sometimes there isn't a breath. And so there was a clearing, I think, that created, for me at least. I remember early in the pandemic, I was talking to EG and I said, is there anything that connects like all artists in our state, like with each other? Like, is there like a listserv or email? And he was like, girl, please. And so, we looked around, we had the conversation with some other folks, and to make a long story short, that was the beginning of us starting the creation of the Minnesota Artists Coalition, with an interest of just being connected. And then after the uprisings, it was like, oh my God, thank goodness we have this. You know what I mean? Like, why can't we also just think beyond this in the sense of like how we activate, and also the number of bricks that I'm carrying on my back, whether that's illuminating inequities at the Minnesota State Arts Board or in philanthropy or over here in the theater systems that keep saying that we're changing and we're doing all this, we're on the path. And you realize that it's like not even a step forward. It's not even a half step. I don't even know what it is. And so I don't want to take up too much time because I do get really passionate about this, but I think my point is there was a clearing that happened that allowed us to see the points of disconnection and where we could be actually really working in more synergy, at least again, speaking for myself, in addition to wow, there is so much systems-based work to do. And I mean, that's just not even like a chip of the mountain. So yeah, I'll just speak to that. And I know it didn't happen just, for some people, it didn't start right at the pandemic or the uprising. It was years and years before.
Wow. I mean, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the work. And it was fantastic to sit in those meetings and to hear some of the conversations um, that was going on. And again, like I said, we just don't have those connections in those places to meet and talk about that stuff. So that was extremely meaningful during the first half of 2020 for me. And then obviously, like you said, um, it was really important after the uprising happened to already have those established connections. I think Vanessa wants to know when your movie will be released. That was one of the questions that just came up. And then we're going to introduce Janetta Petrus briefly.
Okay, yeah. So the documentary that I'm working on will be a feature documentary. And it's called The Underbelly. And I decided, as I was really wanting to amplify the artists who are also activists, who are also healers, who are also, calling for radical change and radical equity, that really this documentary is about healing. And so it will be released actually like in a month. So we're very close to it being done. We're in the final stages, but I realized that the pandemic prevented me from having some of the interviews that I wanted. And so the ways that I want to get in some of those folks that are critical is by, I'm creating these little portals of like faces, and we're kind of in this final hour adding those. And just also reminding people that, sometimes I think there's this this misunderstanding of like big work and small work. And I don't look at, especially when we're looking at systems change, it's like all of the work is essential work. So those of our people that are out there just fighting for artists, rates to be higher and to be honored. And I know there's been years of that. That's just as important as folks that are working at the legislature.
Mm. I agree wholeheartedly with that. So we have another artist leader that I just want to briefly introduce. Janetta Petrus, Nessa, created Free Black Dirt, and I want to introduce her quickly and then let her talk about the work that she does. So Janetta Petrus Nessa is a writer, a soul sweetener, which I really loved. I think that is an apt term. Runaway witch and performance artist of Black Caribbean descent, born and working on unceded Dakota land in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her work centers around wildness, queerness, Black diasporic futurism, ancestral healing, sweetness, shimmer, and liberation. Her first young adult novel, The Stars and the Blackness Between Them, great book, received the Coretta Scott King Honor Award, and she really loves to eat and write about delicious food. She's a co-founder with Aaron Sharkey of Free Black Dirt, a Black experimental healing art collective, and she's currently working on her second novel, Black Circus, set in the 90s about young Black women studying circus with a mysterious elder former circus performer. Ooh. If anything like the first book, I can't wait for that one. So, Janetta, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the work that you do with Free Black Dirt and sort of how that collective got started.
Hey everyone, it's so good to see everyone's faces, and thank you for so graciously pulling me into the fold, Dameun, and inviting me to be here amongst all these people who not only I've witnessed all of the ways that y'all transforming community, but like I've really been healed, as an artist and guided as an artist in the ways of doing, work that includes my entirety, including the ways that I, freedom fight and want there to be joy and sweetness in the world. And yeah, so like, Aaron and I, Aaron Sharkey, is the other half of Free Black Dirt. And we've done a lot of kind of just sort of immersive performance and, kind of creative events, a lot of literary stuff. And just like, how do we just create space for reflecting on Black cultural and literary magic, and I really have always been interested in like, how do we allow ourselves to reflect on Black life without kind of feeling like we have to fixate on the trauma and drama that has been like enforced on us, but really, and not to like pretend or absent the trauma and drama, but just to sort of like center in, I think, holistically Black stuff. And for me as an artist, like I really came into myself as an artist doing circus arts, which was extremely terrifying, but also liberating. And also was a space that I did kind of meditation and prayers with my Black ancestors who'd been lynched, and thinking about the ways that I, reclaim vertical space with my Black, soul, and, send prayers that way. And like, I think, and I'm not, I feel like at a disadvantage because I didn't get to hear what everybody else was saying, but before I showed up, but I really give so much, I used to really sort of like be like, oh, why do I gotta be a Black girl from Minnesota? The cries and the pain of being a Black girl in Minnesota, it can, and being queer on top of that, and an immigrant, and all of these things that I think like can make you feel like, an inherent other within the context, and thus, the ways that we, like I think about Shay, and I think about Ananya and Marianne, and like, like all of the ways that we have like been like, yeah, like this is a space where the kind of art we make happens in Minnesota. And I think that is a resistance that's, I feel like, been very sacred, especially as we've held all of these just like atrocious experiences of, police violence and economic violence and kind of, cute, martyr, Scandinavian, hierarchical violence, that I think happens in Minnesota, where there's this sense of like, oh, what a utopic place, but not for everybody. And I think, so yeah, so I feel like, just like as a, artist, and, even as a writer, like you mentioned my young adult book, like I was like, how do I write a book that's like so deeply Black, so deeply queer, and so unapologetically Minnesotan, and unapologetically, Caribbean immigrant, and abolitionist, and I think like the spaces I'm experiencing as a writer and as a screen emergent screenwriter and filmmaker, has really been situated and doing an art practice that has been so community ensconced, as well as like unapologetically situated and wanting to like burn a lot of the shit down that exists in Minnesota, that didn't desire or imagine any of us in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's me like being like, okay, I'm coming into the lake meeting.
Yeah, no, that was that was fabulous. Thank you so much. One of the things that I think about, you mentioned the connections with the other arts leaders on the panel. I wonder, well, first I want to know if there's any questions from the audience. Let's do a check on that. If you want to raise your hand, if you have any, or put it in the chat. I don't think I saw any so far. I know Haley's helping me out with that, so I don't think I saw any. But I wanna know how you envision, again, going back to Shay and all of you sort of talking about community and bringing things to like, how do we support one another? How do we continue to support one another in this time? So wait, is Ananya raising? Yeah.
I just wanted to say to Janetta, Janetta, every year in my course, Choreographing Social Justice, I teach your work. And a lot of times they're young white girls coming from the, sort of rural Minnesota. But what you do for them it just blows my mind. Because your work, they look at all the videos on your website and they see the the brilliant blackness, magical, transformative, queer, black is so, it just blows their mind. We begin with studying Prayer for Pussies, and then we go on to study your work every fucking year. I just want to say that and I want to say what is important about that is what I said originally, Dameun, about choreography, because this is about a structure. This is about structure, how we make sense, right? This is about knowledge. We don't make sense. We're outside understanding until we make sense. And what these amazing artists like Janetta and Shay and Marianne are doing also is making sense from their location, which may not follow the syntax of meaning that is established. And so the whole way of knowing the world comes from under. And that's just fucking brilliant for me to observe. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, that's beautiful. I don't know. And so how does this connection flourish and all these intersections here? Again, I feel like they've been watered, over and we have a little one over the past year, and the fruits of that new the flowers and blooms are starting to come up, that capitalism hacks and global love and all of those things I'm starting to see. And how do we, well, we're at time. I swear I could just keep talking to you, but I think the question is, how do we keep the momentum going? How do we strengthen these connections for the future, for a beautiful future for our communities and all of that? It's like I have more time. I I don't know if people can hang out for 5 more minutes. I wonder if we could um, kind of answer that question or riff on that a little bit before we close out. It looks like Shay said,
I gotta run to take this child to get his arm x-rayed, but I just wanted to
"Oh
say,
no,
I love y'all, and my Ananya just hit it on the head for me, and that's it. We keep, Roxanne, Anderson is always saying every time we're in a session, they're like, and how can we connect outside of this too? And it just always resonates with me because I'm like, formally and non-formally, Janata, like in our backyards, or so in Ananya, you're the queen of that, making some food and inviting people over. And then the last thing I'll say is remembering again that our elders and our mentors, like our mentors are all around us. They don't have to always be elders. And that's the one thing I hadn't, when I grew up, I thought it had to be an old person. And so even as of late, I'm like, I have learned so much from Ananya, but she ain't old, she just keep doing the thing, so we have to also give tribute to each other, the ways that we, like Marianne, Janata, all of us, so how do we do that and lift each other up? That's the stuff that puts goosebumps on my arms, because it's like, I know I'm seen. And in these 101 things that I'm doing, we might not get a thank you for 99 of them, but that one time that our sister, our brother that's right alongside us says something like, I see you, that's the thing when we go to sleep at night, it's like, oh my God, this is worth it because they see me. And you feel lifted, and that's how you show up for each other. So
yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect closing. That being seen is really important in continuing to uplift one another. And that's one of the things that I have always valued about the four of you, that I see you constantly doing that always. And you all have done it for me, and I felt it, and I've seen you do it for others in the community, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I want to thank you for joining us and being a part of this conversation. I know that I learned a lot, as I always do when I'm in community with all of you, and I hope that everyone else also has found value in this conversation. We will keep this going. I know that we will outside of this formal setting. And the one thing I want to let our visitors, our audience, know that that we'll continue to do this work as an organization at ACF. This is very important to be connected to our local community, but we will also broaden this conversation on a national level as well, and we'll continue this equity summit. Um, we'll have another session coming up in early September this year, and so you can follow. Sign up for our newsletter, follow us our website, and join us on social media to learn about more. We have all we have a page that will continue to share about these organizations that have joined us, the leaders, and the videos that they have submitted. So if you want to check out those videos again, please visit our website and our artist or summit page that we have on there. So thank you so much again, Ananya, Shay, Marianne, and Janetta for joining us this today. It's a great way for me to go into the weekend. I hope it's a great way for you to go into the weekend as well. Enjoy your weekends, and thanks for coming and showing up in the space.
Bye, y'all. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, cute baby. Marianne, cute baby.